to Monster Monday for Monday, March 1st, 2021. I'm your host, DM Galabond. And tonight on Monster Monday, we are going to be talking about a creature out of the Curse of Strahd adventure. This is a figure who's kind of an enigma and yet seems so familiar because of the rich history of real world folklore that virtually everybody on the planet, or at least everybody in the Western world, has heard of. The creature in D&D is called Baba Lysaga and her creeping hut. And of course, that name should evoke Baba Yaga, the famous witch of Russian folklore, who is featured in thousands of stories. So we're going to talk a little bit in this Monster Monday, not only about how to mine the folklore of a D&D monster for your own homebrew campaign, but how you can reach outside D&D and go to sort of the sources that inspired the creators of D&D and mine some of the folklore out of that for your own games. Let's go ahead and get started with our look at Baba Lysaga. Okay, Baba Lysaga is depicted as this hideous crone. She is deformed. She's kind of all shriveled up, skin pulled tight around her skeleton, uh, long fingers. Her fingernails end like in claws. Uh, and the history of this creature is that she was the midwife to Queen Ravenovia von Reoven, who is Strahd's biological mother. She's also a devout follower of Mother Night. Now, we're going to look at Mother Night in a little bit, but Mother Night is one of the dark powers that is entombed in the Amber Temple that some of your players may go to. And so this Mother Night is like one of the gods of the demiplane of Ravenloft. Incredibly powerful figure. So when Strahd was still a baby in his crib, Baba Lysaga sensed a potential for greatness and darkness in him, surpassing that of any other mortal. And Lysaga believed then, as she does now, that she is Strahd's true mother. Okay. Baba Lysaga cast protective spells on the infant Strahd and crept into his nursery on stormy nights to sing magical rhymes to him. She also placed a spark of magic in him, ensuring that he would become a spellcaster. So she's she in some ways is at least partly responsible for Strahd becoming who and what he is. But this is a 2-for-1 monster because you can't talk about Baba Lysaga without also talking about her creeping hut. Now, um, Baba Lysaga built this hut atop the rotting stump of a giant tree that had been felled long ago. And it was only after she embedded a magical gemstone in the hut that the whole thing was imbued with a semblance of life. When she wills it to do so, the hut pulls its gigantic roots free of the earth and shambles around like a spidery behemoth, shaking the ground with every step. The hut attacks with its flailing and stomping roots. It can also use its roots to fling large rocks. Now, when we get to looking at the stat block of this thing, you're going to see just how devastating this hut can be in terms of if you have to face both Baba Lysaga and the hut in an encounter. Okay, now there's a ton of lore and it's so good. I didn't want to skip any of it, but I'm just going to have to hit the highlights of it here uh, when we talk about that. Uh, we said that Baba Lysaga paid a lot of attention to the baby Strahd, and that didn't go unnoticed. Queen Ravenovia was forced to banish the midwife from the kingdom. Now, in the official lore, it kind of implies that it was her of snooping around Strahd's crib that got her banished from the kingdom. But as we're going to see, there's some other rumors about her. Um, so, despite the horror Strahd has wrought, Lysaga still envisions him the perfect child that she delivered into the world. And during her exile, she's made countless sacrifices to Mother Night, pleading with the goddess to afflict Queen Ravinia with ill health and visit death upon her. Lysaga eventually got her wish. After Strahd settled in the valley of Barovia, Lysaga moved as close to him as she dared to. Now, in the filth-ridden depths of Baba Lysaga's heart, she knows that Strahd would never accept her as a true mother, nor could she bear his rejection. So as a result, she's never confronted him, and she would rather exist in perpetual denial, whiling away the days, months, and years, practicing fell magic and looking for ways to help her beloved son. Okay, now, as close uh, as the castle that Strahd himself inhabits, Baba Lysaga does have allies throughout uh, Ravenloft, or throughout Barovia. In the castle, there's a coven of witches, and Lysaga has uncovered a potential threat to Strahd, which is a secret society of were-ravens called the Keepers of the Feather. And that's a group that uses ordinary ravens as their spies. Um, Strahd doesn't think they're a threat, but Baba Lysaga thinks differently. Why is this important? Because in the plot points of the adventure, those were-ravens are a potential ally for the party, and that is one way that Baba Lysaga can become aware of the party, or the party can become aware of her, and that can lead to an eventual confrontation between the party and this creature. So there's also she's also forged an alliance with mad druids that haunt Yester Hill, and Strahd, or those druids consider Strahd a god, and Baba Lysaga has convinced them that she actually gave birth to him. The goddess Mother Night has bestowed magical gifts on Baba Lysaga as rewards for her ceaseless devotion. Her skin has the resilience of stone. She's resistant to harmful magic, and she's shielded against divination. And she's also imparted to Lysaga the secret of longevity. And this secret requires Baba Lysaga to bathe in the blood of beasts on nights of the new moon. Failure to do so will cause her to age rapidly, becoming mere dust and bones in a matter of seconds. So that is, she's really not a very warm and fuzzy character. Okay. Now the hut itself is a 15-foot square ramshackle building, gently sloping thatched roof. Its furnishings are bolted to the floor because the hut lurches around when it walks. So there is some humor. Now, the gemstone that uh, gives the gives the hut its life is one of the three that was stolen from the Wizard of Wine's vineyard. And that's yet another way that the party might wind up encountering Baba Lysaga if they want to go and find uh, those three gems and return them to the vineyard. They will eventually have to go and confront Baba Lysaga and steal this gem from the hut. And once that gem is taken, the hut becomes incapacitated. Um, and then there's all kinds of defenses in there. The hut itself will attack people that try to pry up the floorboards and pull the gem out. The cavity has wooden teeth, becoming a mouth that bites anybody that tries to remove um, the gem, and it takes a DC 20 Dex save to avoid those snapping teeth. So it's not terribly easy to get by that. So, and you can see as I was putting this together, I kept, she's so close to Baba Yaga. Sometimes I put the name Baba Yaga in these slides. Should be Baba Lysaga. So humanoids, she's a humanoid. So she's not, a lot of times you'd be tempted to think of her as something like a hag or a banshee or something, which are different creature types. But in reality, she is a humanoid because at some point she did start off as a human being. Um, and so that means that she shares all of the same basic character traits as humanoids, but she has these other templates of things that have been laid on top of her because of her devotion to Mother Night. Um, and they're pretty diverse. Humanoids are, and run the gamut, but um, they're susceptible to certain things and they have certain other characteristics. But Baba Lysaga, she's really kind of a unique person. The hut, on the other hand, is a construct. So constructs obviously are made, not born. They are sometimes they're programmed by their creators, and in the case of the hut, it's animated by a combination of the magic in this gemstone and the will of Baba Lysaga. So if you take the gemstone away, it will lose its animation. If you take Baba Lysaga away, then I guess the hut would fall under the control of whoever basically was powerful enough to become its new master, if you will. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to look at some of the sources on the web, and we're going to talk a little bit about the lore of Baba Lysaga, and we're going to start by looking at the historic folklore about the Russian folklore creature Baba Yaga. So Baba Yaga comes from Slavic folklore, and it's an interesting. She's a very interesting creature because in folklore, she's always depicted as being a deformed or ferocious-looking old woman. Sometimes she's considered a single creature, and sometimes she is a trio of sisters who all have the same name. And one of the most memorable aspects about her is that Baba Yaga lives in a hut, usually described as standing on chicken legs. Also, that she has a great cauldron or sometimes a hollow log that she can actually fly around in. And she commonly appears as either a villain or sometimes a donor or sometimes quite ambiguous. And her depictions vary greatly across tales, ranging from a child eating monster to helping a poor protagonist to find his missing bride. So she's many faceted, capable of inspiring researchers to see her as a cloud, moon, death, winter, snake, bird, pelican, or earth goddess. She can be a totemic matriarchal ancestress, a female initiator, a phallic mother, or an archetypal image. And what they talk about with Baba Yaga is they talk about the etymology of her name, and Baba is um, there's a lot of translations that are very similar. Things like grandmother or or woman or whatever, and in various different you know uh, Slavic languages and related languages. And it seems to me kind of interesting that they spend so much time trying to figure out what Yaga means. But, you know, I think the answer is probably very simple. If Baba means grandmother, Yaga is probably like a proper name. So it'll be like Grandmother Yaga, and so or a nickname for a proper name. But that's just me. There's no research that says that. Um, Now, I'm not going to talk about the folk tales about Baba Yaga, but I just want you to look here at this rich history of all of these folk tales and all of the links to other sources that there are in here. This is uh, one of the greatest things when you are going to mine a monster out of D&D and bring it into a homebrew campaign. Something that you should feel completely empowered and very free to do is to try to figure out what the what the inspiration for that monster was for the D&D creators. Um, Baba Lysaga is one of those that it's just so obvious that Baba Yaga was one of the main inspirations. So if you're going to take Baba Lysaga out of Ravenloft or out of Barovia and put her into a homebrew campaign, go ahead and mine some of this stuff, some of the folklore. You can have that be some of the aspects of the creature and some of the things that are related. And so you look um, all of these different uh, sources and um, how she's referred to in pop culture and everything like that. So, a very interesting creature indeed. Now we're going to get into information about Baba Lysaga as it relates to the D&D character. Now, this is a wiki that I have not seen before. It's Alberon's Mistake Wiki. And I was looking at some of the normal sources that I use, and they really just were regurgitating a lot of stuff out of the Curse of Strahd. So I was trying to find if there was anything that may, go outside of that and give a little more insight into it. And um, here are two very incredibly interesting tidbits in this particular bit of lore. Okay, number one, um, the exact age and origins of Baba Lysaga are unclear, but Esmeralda Davenir says that Lysaga is likely the oldest living being in Barovia. So um, she is ancient. And then there's another thing about her. Uh, it goes into a little bit more detail um, about the relationship between Baba Lysaga and Strahd. Um, Lysaga was Strahd's nursemaid, fed him a few drops of her own blood, planting a dark seed of magic within him. And she's quoted as saying, "A leader of men, a leader of worlds, sitting astride a dark horse, blood on your blade, blood on your lips, blood on your hands, a great man, a strong man. But you will not forget your Baba Lysaga. No, that silly bent may have grown you in her belly, but you will remember who really gave you life." Um, and then another tidbit is that Lysaga carried on an affair with King Barov and became pregnant with a daughter named Eva. Well, who is Eva? Eva is now the Vistani Madame Eva, the one who does all of the Taroka card readings. One that probably the party will meet very early on. So, Madame Eva is a half sister of Strahd, and half sister of Strahd uh, by the king Barov, and is a direct child of Baba Lysaga. So it sort of it sort of gives this whole dark taint to the Vistani and helps to make their mystery, uh, even more deeply entwined in the mists of Barovia than they already are. So there's um, there's a lot of other information here about Baba Lysaga. But one of the other characters that feeds into Baba Lysaga's longevity and her power is, of course, Mother Night. And it's important to know something about Mother Night. So, Mother Night is one of the dark powers of Barovia, an ancient and powerful being bound in the land of Barovia and the Amber Temple. And she has been bound into Baba Lysaga, and I believe that Mother Night is the one amber sarcophagus that is shattered and broken and is in air quotes empty, which lends credence to the fact that Mother Night may actually be out in the wild, and her spirit may actually be within um, Baba Lysaga itself. So now Baba Lysaga probably is not powerful enough to really be considered a full blown deity, but you know, she might carry a seed of something, and who knows what would happen if a meddling adventurer came along and killed Baba Lysaga. Um, that seed of Mother Night may want to hitch a ride to get out of Barovia with the PC that killed Baba Lysaga. And then may start twisting that character's mind, driving it to ever darker and more evil practices. Oh, if you're a DM running that, the fun you could have. All right, so you have all kinds of things that you can do with Mother Night, or at least the lore that you can find about Mother Night that can help to inform how you portray Baba Lysaga if you are playing her within the Curse of Strahd adventure, or if you're going to pull her out of Curse of Strahd and put her somewhere else. You may still have Mother Night as a figure, um, whether or not the Amber Temple and those dark powers um, fall anywhere in your adventure or not. That's completely up to you, of course, as the DM. All right, so now let's get down to brass tacks and let's talk a little bit about the stat block. Um, Baba Lysaga uh, has an AC of 15 natural armor, 120 hit points. She's a CR 11. She is a shape changer, and she can polymorph herself into a swarm of flies or back into her true form. And she's shielded against divination magic, um, and as if she's protected by a non-detection spell. She's a 16th level spellcaster who has wizard spells up to the 8th level. She's got one slot each of 6th, 7th, 8th, 2 of 5th, 3 of 4th, 3 of 3rd, 3 of 2nd, 4 of 1st, and then and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cantrips. And she can make 3 attacks with her quarterstaff. Now, the quarterstaff +8 to hit, and it doesn't deal any special damage, and it's not considered a magical weapon. So that's kind of interesting to think that she's this powerful, and yet she doesn't have a magical weapon. Now, summon swarm of insects. She can summon 1d4 swarms of insects, and then they, um, they will act as she commands, and they remain until they die or until Baba Lysaga dismisses them as an action. And then we look at the hut. Um, and the hut has an AC of 16, 263 hit points, speed of 30 feet, uh, and is immune to poison and psychic damage. Is also immune to being blinded, charmed, deafened, exhausted, frightened. Basically, that's because it's a construct. So it has most of the construct immunities. Is blind sight out to 120 feet, and it is blind beyond that, and only has a passive perception of 6. Now it is also a CR11 monster. Um, Now, anti-magic susceptibility. So it's incapacitated while the magic gem that animates it is in the area of an anti-magic field. And if targeted by dispel magic, the hut must succeed on a con saving throw or fall unconscious for a minute. And it deals double damage to objects and structures. Now, multi-attack. Hut makes 3 attacks with its roots. It can replace one of these attacks with a rock attack. But take a look at these melee attacks. The root attack has a plus 12 to hit and a reach of 60 feet. So it's a melee attack that can reach out to 60 feet. That's longer than some range weapons long range is. So just keep in mind how devastating uh, this thing is when you have it in combat. And if you're running as a DM, you gotta make use of all of that reach, and you have got to find ways of luring your party in close to that thing, and then just punishing them for being dumb enough to get too close. Um, and then also the rock attack is a plus 12 range attack, and that can go out to 120 feet. Now, all of these attacks are pretty devastating. They're all bludgeoning attacks. The root attack does 4d10 plus 8 damage, and the rock attack, the range attack, does 3d8 plus 8 damage. So they're going to leave a mark. Those attacks are going to leave a mark if they connect with your players. All right, so let's go back and take a look again at uh, the rest of our information on Baba Lysaga. Now, one of the things we always try to do is we try to figure how we could use Baba Lysaga in encounters. And the what I was doing here is I was thinking, how would you use Baba Lysaga and her hut as a unit in an encounter against 5 PCs of a certain level? So this is going to be a rather high level encounter because you're almost never going to find Baba Lysaga without her hut or find the hut without Baba Lysaga. You would really have to do like the party would really have to do some reconnaissance and do some good old fashioned up close, stakeout of the hut to wait to see when Baba Lysaga leaves. Because one thing we haven't even touched on with Baba Lysaga is that she has yet another toy that she plays with. Uh, Sitting outside the hut is an upside down skull of a hill giant, and that hovers in the air outside the hut. And you guessed it, Baba Lysaga can hop in that hollowed out skull, and she can fly around in it. So it's this hill giant skull that flies around with Baba Lysaga at the controls. So your party could go and find the hut, stake it out, and then wait for Baba Lysaga to fly off, and then try to maybe attack the hut. Alternately, the party could try to wait until Baba Lysaga flies somewhere and somehow try to follow her if they have a means of flying and remaining undetected, and then um, wind up trying to attack her away from the hut so that the hut can't be there. But if you're fighting the two of them together, it's a hard encounter. Those two together are a hard encounter for a party of level 12 to 15. And at level 12, it's nearly a deadly encounter. Now, when you go from level 16 to 18, it becomes a medium encounter. And you can add up to 5 scarecrows at level 18. Now, why 5 scarecrows? Well, because in the adventure, scarecrows being low level constructs, Baba Lysaga creates scarecrows uh, as kind of sentinels around the area where she normally lives. She lives in the ruins of a village. That's kind of her home base where the hut always goes back to, and those animated scarecrows will guard that area. So you can um, you can add 5 of those scarecrows to make it a hard encounter for a 18th level party. Now, level 19 and 20, it's an easy encounter with these two. If you want to make it a hard encounter, you can add 9 scarecrows to face off against a 20th level party. Um, uh, the you may think that scarecrows, which I believe are CR3, wouldn't pose much of a challenge. But the thing is, when you get a lot of enemies on the battlefield all getting attacks during a round, then you quickly can get your party having to deal with 2 or 3 adds each as they're trying to go um, after the main opponents in a battle. And those extra attacks, if some of them land, then that just really starts to wear down and hack off some hit points and whatnot. So uh, that's that's an option that you have if you're running Baba Lysaga, especially if you're playing it in Curse of Strahd. Now, let's think about being that party that has to go up against Baba Lysaga. What are some of the things that you have to consider? How when you're being tactical, what do you have to keep in mind when you're fighting against Baba Lysaga? Well, first of all, you have to worry about Baba Lysaga's spellcasting ability. Um, she's a 16th level spellcaster. She has wizard spells up to 8th level, so she can hurt. She can hurt you pretty badly with her magical spell attacks. Now, Baba Lysaga is also a shape changer. She can change into a swarm of flies. And now that's a polymorph spell, so of course, when you deal enough damage to destroy the swarm of flies, you don't kill Baba Lysaga, you just force her back into her normal form, and the hit points come off, any excess hit points come off of her hit point total from her normal form. And in addition to the hut, Baba Lysaga can also summon swarms of insects. And another thing that I didn't even mention here that we just talked about is you have to watch out for those scarecrow sentinels. Um, Baba Lysaga, those are constructs, and so she has them programmed. You, as the DM, you can make her programming as devious or as plain as you want it to be. Maybe they are just simple sentinels that when they detect intruders, they just immediately go and start attacking intruders. Or maybe um, those scarecrows are more subtle. Maybe they watch intruders, and if intruders look like they are going to pose a threat to Baba Lysaga or the hut, maybe they come up and attack then. So you could have your party, you know, sneak through, notice, hey, there's scarecrows there, and those scarecrows could stay perfectly still. And you think, oh, okay, well, they're just normal scarecrows. Then you go and start beating on Baba Lysaga, and suddenly after that, all the scarecrows come and start attacking the party. So you could use them that way. Remember, Baba Lysaga has a connection to a deity. Um, so as DM, you're free to make her as smart as you want to make her. And then you have to consider with the hut that it is a construct, so all of the immunities, damage immunities to poison and psychic damage, and then condition immunities, all of the conditions that constructs are immune to. All right, now flip it around. You're the DM. You have a meddling party that wants to come in and try to mess up Baba Lysaga. How are you going to repay them? All right. You can choose whether you want to use them as two separate monsters and give the party two different targets to attack with, or whether you want to use the hut as something like a mount and have Baba Lysaga be in the hut um, and attacking there. And then, of course, also don't forget that hill giant skull that she can fly around in. Baba Lysaga could um, jump into that skull and go flying, and then she could attack the party from the air while the hut fights the party on the ground. Um, in any case, Baba Lysaga should open the combat with her most potent ability. Now, thinking about what is most potent, it's probably her power word stun spell. This can be especially effective against, a low wisdom, low intelligence, big tank type character, like perhaps a big fighter or a barbarian. She's and like we said before, remember that she's connected to the dark power Mother Night, so it's reasonable to presume that Baba Lysaga would have some supernatural knowledge of the party, what their makeup is, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and you can feel free to sort of exploit that and use her most potent abilities against the party members that can resist them the least. So, yes, take that power word stun and use it on the barbarian. Don't try to use it on the cleric. That would be kind of dumb because the cleric has the highest wisdom probably and would have the easiest time breaking that stun effect. But try to hit it, try to hit the person that is going to be locked up for the longest period of time by that. Now, Baba Lysaga, once she stuns one party member, she could keep another party member tied up by employing one of her concentration spells, such as Crown of Madness or Polymorph. If she polymorphs a another uh, party member into a beast, well then that you basically have removed that person from the battle, at least until somebody can cast a dispel magic on them or do something to break that polymorph, or maybe break her concentration. Likewise, you could take a Crown of Madness, and let's say that the power word stun doesn't land on the barbarian. The next thing you could do is put Crown of Madness on the barbarian, and then turn that barbarian against the other party members. And still, at the end of every round, that character is having to try to make wisdom saves to break out of that Crown of Madness. And of course, if she's flying around in her skull and she's staying out of range of melee, well then the party has to hope they can hit her with a range spell or a range spell attack. Um, and then you know if the party has all the protections and none of those concentration things land, then just go for the high damage spells like Finger of Death or area damage spells like Cloud Killer Fireball. Um, now, uh, you also have to keep in mind that reach that the hut has. Melee attacks have a reach of 60 feet with the roots, and it can hurl the boulders 120 feet. at spellcasters that are trying to hold on to concentration spells. And if Baba Lysaga has foreknowledge of the party coming, perhaps through the hags or the witches at the castle, um, or maybe other servants of Mother Night in Barovia, um, then she might set up an ambush for the party by having the hut appear to be simply on the ground and not standing on its roots, so that the first melee attacks by the roots may attempt to be surprise attacks. So really play up the fact that Baba Lysaga is an intelligent enemy that is connected to very powerful, intelligent allies. And use that to your advantage as a DM and really, really make the party earn the fight. What I've learned as a DM is that when a party is going up against a powerful enemy, of course they want to win. And of course, the party hates to feel like you are throwing them into a no win situation and that you're just trying to get a TPK. But if you can have them finish the fight with several of the party members down well below half their hit points, and possibly even one or two party members unconscious at the end of the fight, then they really feel like they earned that victory and they feel like they had to use all of their resources in order to win. And that's the kind of thing. If you have them go against Baba Lysaga and her hut as a unit, you want that to feel like that kind of victory that they really have to scratch and claw and fight for to their last breath as PCs. All right. So now, where would you place Baba Lysaga in campaigns? Well, obviously, if you're running Curse of Strahd, or if you're setting something of your own in the demi-plane of Barovia, Baba Lysaga is located in the ruins of Berez. It's a place of death where animated scarecrows are created and where Baba Lysaga sacrifices animals in order to bathe in their blood and stave off the effects of old age. So she's connected to several lesser and greater powers in Barovia. We've talked about Mother Night. We've talked about the hags. We've talked about the druids. We've talked about the witches. We've obviously, there's an undeniable connection to Strahd. There's also the connection to Madame Eva. Now, Madame Eva is a character that ostensibly seems friendly to the party. But what if the party kills Baba Lysaga? That's her mom. What would Madame Eva, what would the rest of the Vistani do if you killed Madame Eva's mother? They may not like that very much. Even if you attack her and have to flee for your lives, word gets back to them. They may not be so friendly anymore. So think about that. Think about how you might use that if you're running Curse of Strahd. Now, outside of Barovia, Baba Lysaga could be a stand-in for any kind of folklore witch that is based on Baba Yaga. You could substitute her deity Mother Night for any kind of evil dark power in your game world, and you could connect Baba Lysaga to covens of hags and witches in the area where your campaign is taking place. So keep all of that in mind. Think about how Baba Lysaga might well be some sort of great power like this within the game world that you are creating. All right, now, how could you reskin Baba Lysaga? She's a humanoid, but the way that she acts and um, the evil associated with her, you could easily see her as some sort of a fiend, or you might even see her as some sort of chaotic fae. Um, you could cast her as kind of a rural devil that requires blood contracts with peasants in exchange for boons like good crops, healthy children, or mild weather. or she could be some kind of evil demon that causes chaos for the local residents. Or even still, if you are, running a campaign that's sort of, this touches back to what we talked about with Oral the Frost Maiden last week. If you haven't seen that one, go back and watch that one. Um, the if your if your campaign centers around sort of an environment in crisis or civilization's encroachment on the natural world, then there may be some, Baba Lysaga in your game world might represent some kind of chaotic fey creature that has passed over from the Feywild into the natural world and is sort of acting out as an animated um, defender of nature that is striking back at civilization, and obviously probably not striking back at the heart of towns and cities, but at the farmers and the little villages that are out on the fringes of the wilderness. So um, that could be, this Baba Saga could be used in any of those contexts and representing any of those types of things in your campaign. And there's there's the hags that are at the old bone grinder mill that are followers of Mother Night. And what they are doing there is with those sweets that they sell or those pies that they sell in some of the villages, they're luring children out to that mill, and then they're capturing the children and fattening them up, and then they're sacrificing the children and grinding their bones to use in more pies, but also using the blood of those children to try to um, make that a sacred spot for Mother Night, the dark power. So everything about Baba Lysaga is just evil to the core. I mean, she is just nasty in every single way. And you know, she's a delicious type of villain that you could take and put into your own game world and use as, you know, just something that would literally make the skin crawl on your players, um, because she's just so wicked and does such horrible things. All right, so we've come to the Q&A portion. Checking the chat room, and I don't see any questions in the chat room, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. I'll come back and check to see if we have any questions here. All right. I have been DM Galaban. This has been Monster Monday. We talked about Baba Saga and her creeping hut. I hope that this has been educational for you, that you've learned something about the creature, and about how you can use Baba Saga outside of the Curse of Strahd in your own games. And maybe even if you are running the Curse of Strahd as a DM, some of the tactics you can use when you throw this monster at your party. All right. If you want to follow some of the actual play games that I run over on my Twitch channel, we run a 5e planeswalking game called The Walker of Waterdeep Sunday afternoons at 2 p.m. We run a 5e uh, kind of survey campaign is what I'm trying to call it. It's a survey of the 5e campaigns connected together with a homebrew storyline in the Sword Coast Chronicles. That's on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. And then on Saturday nights at 7:30 p.m. we're running the Lost Mine of Original D&D. And that is the Lost Mine of Phandelver retold with the rule set from original D&D in the 1970s. Now we're getting very close to finishing that, And as of this week, I let the players know that when we finish that up, they're going to have to help me figure out what we do next on Saturday nights. So I don't know whether they're going to want to do a big, huge, long campaign in the same rule set, if they're going to want to do another shorter campaign uh, with either the original rules or rules from another edition of D&D, or exactly what we're going to do. So we will probably still have a game on Saturday nights unless the players decide, no, we're just going to take a break for a while. But which they can all decide to do. Follow us on Saturdays at 7:30. See what happens as we wrap up the Lost Mine campaign, and see what happens going forward on that time slot. All right, you can also find me, or all of those actual plays are on Twitch. You can find all the archives of that stuff. Those are all current as of today over on my YouTube channel. And I do have a Patreon. Now, if you have followed this channel for a while, you probably have gotten used to me putting content out 7 days a week. That is going to be changing. I'm going to be throttling back a little bit. You'll still have Monster Monday. I'll still be putting up the archives of the actual play sessions. But aside from those, um, and aside from the recap show, I'm probably going to be only putting out one um, video a week, because now that I have a catalog up there, what I want to do is I want to start playing around with spending a little more time post production on the videos and doing some editing and some other types of things that I really haven't had the time to do because I've been so busy making videos that I really haven't had time to do a lot of post on them. Literally everything I've done for the last year has been I do it in a single take, and if I mess up, I go back and I start over. But what gets posted is one single continuous take without any editing in there. So because I just don't have time to do the editing. But now, if I post fewer videos than a video every day, I will have time to go and do some editing. And then, sort of learning all that side of the video production as well. All right. And then if you're a super fan, we do have our Patreon. It'd be great to see some folks over there supporting us that way. And I'm going to wrap up like I always do by reminding you to watch out for the monsters under the bed. Good night, everybody.